Our next question comes from Emily McCord of WYSO.
I'd like to direct this question again to Mr. Foley. I'm curious, someone like Stephanie, what she can do right now. Is there money available in the Neighborhood Stabilization Program or other stimulus funding that, for example, if she wants to paint her house, to improve her house and make that house have a ripple effect across the neighborhood of a beacon and things that, other people can look at, and it'll raise the property value of the houses surrounding it. But she can't do that because she doesn't have that money right now. Is there something available to someone like Stephanie who has a place that she's investing in, she's living in for her life, that she wants to do it? And I guess also sort of as a follow-up to that, who's responsible for these vacant properties in the neighbor to her that has a complete, overgrown weeds and what's going on there? Who's responsible for cleaning up that mess? Is it a neighbor, or is the city doing that?
Well, I'm assuming that somebody still is the owner of that property, and I don't know the number of vacant properties. Ken, I don't know if you mentioned the number, but
it was 36,000.
36,000
in Montgomery County.
Montgomery County. So there's still, unless the property has gone into foreclosure or the bank has taken the property back, there's still an owner of that property. So I think in a truest sense of the word, an owner is responsible. But obviously, in a case where you see neglectful properties and nobody's doing anything about it, I know it's common if there's a vacant lot and the weeds grow up a few feet, after a certain amount of time, that can be put on somebody's property tax bill, right? But again, if there's nobody who's going to pay the property taxes, then where are you at? It's a difficult issue, and it's not a new issue. And the first part of your question, Emily, was who can Stephanie go to? I wrote down a few agencies in the community who are involved in this kind of work. I have to admit to you, I don't have an answer as to which agency or if any of those agencies can help. And I have a feeling Stephanie's probably made a lot of phone calls or inquired in a lot of places. And I think you're right. I think, if you have somebody who's investing in their property and they're a good neighbor, it's a frustrating thing, right? Because if we're talking about rebuilding neighborhoods, this is probably one way to do it. And unfortunately, I don't have I wish I could give a better answer, but I don't have one. I don't know, and maybe Bill or Alfred could tell, but I don't know if stimulus dollars can be used for that purpose. I've not heard that it can. But I'm always willing to check into that, at least on our end. And just so you know, there are two pots of stimulus money. The city has stimulus money for the city, and so they received an allocation, and the county also received a separate allocation for the jurisdictions who are not entitled on their own to those funds. So we're kind of a pass-through for some of those other areas. But I mean, I'd be willing to look into it for you as well. Okay.
Thank you. That was County Commissioner Dan Foley. It sounds like maybe Ms. Evans would like to follow up. So go ahead, step up to the mic and have at him.
Thank you very much. What I wanted to say was there are volunteer groups that will help the elderly and disabled, but there is absolutely nothing out there for what we call the working poor. Anyone who is above 50% of the median income and above has very rough time getting any assistance from anywhere. So it really does come down to neighbors helping neighbors. And if there was some way to put together a volunteer group of people that would help a neighbor do what needs to be done, as I mentioned before, such things as barn raisings, paint parties, rent parties that used to happen years ago, that would be a great thing in the neighborhood, and we just don't have the capacity yet to put those volunteers together or find the funding for materials to help people who can't do all of it.
Emily McCord of WYSO.
I do have a follow-up, again, for Mr. Foley. You've mentioned a couple times that you really think that the answer is going to have to lie in what the federal government is doing to really get things moving. What is the city of Dayton doing and Montgomery County to best position us with the state and with the federal levels to get our story out there?
Well, I can tell you, so we talk about what has to happen at the federal level, and I think the answer I could tell you is advocacy from an elected official standpoint, advocacy from from a member of the community standpoint. What are a couple of the pieces of that? And I think Alfred and Bill could add to this, but I don't begrudge a bank from making a profit. I don't think anybody in this room begrudges a bank from making a profit, right? But what we've seen is a system where products that have been developed that have harmed people in our community. It is inconceivable to me that half of the civil cases in Montgomery County Common Pleas Court, or half of the cases in Montgomery County Common Pleas Court, half the civil cases are foreclosure cases. And that, as Bill suggested, that's not just Dayton. But if you're asking me what would I do, we have to advocate with the federal government to do a couple things. First, overall, you have to say, look, if we're going to develop financial products, you have to balance financial innovation with the impact on people. We've not done that, and that's what a big cause of this problem is. I personally support the development of a consumer finance protection agency. President Obama has talked about this, an agency that would almost, and I'm putting my own words on this, it would almost test drive financial products so that you could figure out whether or not a product is going to be one that will pass the smell test. I also advocate another thing, and that is that if AIG, right, this big company that was a big cause of the financial meltdown, there was a report later that said that this company was broken up into little pieces, and there was not one regulator for that company. The state insurance commissioner in New York figured out that he regulated 1% of the company, and then you had about 30 other people who represented another percent, and they never talked to each other. And so these are some of the things. Again, nobody here begrudges a bank from making a reasonable profit. And I want to say one last thing because it makes you realize this is a multi-tiered issue. Consumers, I think, have to change too. I mean, we are in a point now where we have taken a lot of money out of our houses because of the products, but also because of our practices. And I think this whole notion of financial education is something that's important. Now, I was at the supermarket one time. I was buying milk, and I paid for my milk, and the receipt came out, and there was a MasterCard application at the bottom of it. And I remember thinking to myself, that's probably not a great idea that I could get a credit card when I'm picking up my milk. So, I mean, I'm talking not only just, this whole notion of financial education has to also be backed up by the fact that we also need to change our ways a little bit. We need to save some more money. So.
But is there a plan that the city of Dayton is sort of working on to kind of position themselves to help implement that, whatever Dayton needs, and knowing what we need, and then finding a way to advocate that up the chain?
Well, plan would probably be too strong a word. I can tell you that from my standpoint, my personal opinion, I mean, I'm going to work to support this consumer agency that I think will add more federal regulation and federal support for financial products that don't harm people. So I think that's probably the simplest and truest way that I can answer it on my own.
Thank you. That was Montgomery County Commissioner Dan Foley.